What's going on, guys? I am Says Nate, and this is the Says Nate YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about enshitification. It was the word of the year in 2003, so I am a little late on this video, but enshitification is all around us in all the products we use, the digital products, and even the physical products. And we're going to talk a lot about Uber today because I think it's a prime example of enshitification, but we're going to talk about other examples and how enshitification occurs both naturally and unnaturally. So food delivery used to be simple. You'd call a restaurant, a guy named Tony might pick up, say, what do you want? You tell him what you want. His little cousin would drive the food over, right? 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes on a long night. Food was so hot, the food was cheap, the delivery was cheap, tip the driver. Very simple. The service and the delivery were part of the product of the restaurant. Then Uber said, hey, what if we come in and we make everything worse? And we're going to burn billions of dollars doing it. I'm going to read a quote here from Cory Doctorow, who coined the term enshitification. Enshitification is the process where platforms start by being good to consumers, then good to business partners, then good only to shareholders, then finally good to absolutely no one, not even themselves. Uber and Uber Eats didn't start as a real business. They started as a financial hallucination. Between 2014 and 2023, Uber lost $31 billion. But the thing is, that loss was intentional. Investors subsidized cheap rides, hot fries, for Uber to become like the Department of Transportation de facto and delivery. I'm not sure what the plan was, but they thought it could get so big that then they could control the world. And it's kind of true. It's kind of true. They have almost done that. Early Uber had one singular mission. It was to move fast, break laws, and burn cash. But eventually, companies grow up and their growth trajectory slows. And instead of growth, they have to return shareholder value. And that's code for stop having fun, stop burning cash, and start giving us money. So what we see is delivery fees up by 70 to 200%, driver pay slashed by 20 to 40%, and customer service outsourced or automated. That sounds like enshitification to me. Uber didn't just enshitify themselves, though. They enshitified an entire industry of food delivery and kind of food in general, right? Before apps existed, like I said, restaurants delivered their own goods, and often it came with a promise of we're going to deliver your pizza within 30 minutes or it's free. It was literally part of the promise, part of the product, part of the reason you shopped with a certain store. And as apps have taken over, right, they probably promised, hey, this is going to be more convenient. You're not going to have a delivery driver and the insurance for one on staff. Maybe you don't have to have the vehicle anymore. Just give us a piece of every order. And that probably sounded great. And we're going to give you more reach. You're going to reach a lot of people with our awesome app. But what happened is apps charge 20 to 30% for the food. So the restaurants have to raise their prices. Meanwhile, they've outsourced all their in-house staff. So that means the service is worse and the prices are higher. And so now, in a world where you used to order from your normal restaurant from them and you get it for a cheaper price in a quicker time, you're paying more for a worse service. That's enshitification. And with the dominance of food apps, restaurants don't even offer their own delivery service, so it's your only choice. That is real enshitification because they get you by the coat, but they get you, and then they squeeze you. It's a two-step process. Get you, squeeze it, get you, squeeze it, get you, squeeze it. So this is what I would call a process of natural enshitification. And it can happen to big companies like Uber, who overspend to capture market share and then need to kind of wrangle things in to build a real company. Now, Uber had some unnatural drivers of their enshittification, which we'll get to in a few minutes, but I'll bring this back to like a smaller founder-led company because it's kind of personal to me. I'm a founder and I can see how this happens. And so you can run a company for years because you love it and you're not making much money at all. And you're throwing yourself into the business because you love it and you're leveraging your own time and energy to make the product better and the services better to your clients. Well, at some point, you're like, I got to start making money from this thing. And at some point, the business grows, so you can't touch every detail, right? And so, again, there's this choice. And it's the same choice that the higher ups at Ubers make and someone with a small business makes. If they want to make more money, they need to improve their business. That's the bottom line. And instead of improving their business to charge more for it, creating a premier product that allows them dominance within the market to charge more for it because they're so good, or by getting really efficient and lowering the cost for the product and being able to sell more of it. They don't want to do either one of those things, right? They want to take the easy route and they say, look, you know what? We used to use that really nice beef from the local farm. I'm going to get this grass-fed beef flown in. It's probably just as good, right? I'm gonna outsource all my customer service, right, to a call center. We're not gonna in-house that. I think it's fine. It'll save us $250K a year. These are the decisions that are being made that lead to enshittification. Young founders, young businesses are focused on building the best product they can, winning market. They're not focused on the profit, right? So it goes hand in hand with that shift as well. But in the end, they end up just like Uber. They're cutting costs and raising prices, and they're not focused on delivering more value. So there's another natural pathway of enshittification, and this one's pretty interesting too, and it's less personal. It is market driven. And this is when the market actually prefers a shittier product. Okay? And usually this kind of occurs in niche products, but it also occurs really, really broadly. And generally, it's when a cheaper, worse product provides more value, which means the product is eh, relative to price, it's better, right? So it's like, a $20 pair of jeans that's kind of crappy might provide more value than a $2,000 pair of jeans, right? They're worse, but more people are going to buy the $20 pair. So this is true and kind of proven. Deloitte did a study on this, that people will prefer a cheaper, slower delivery option in general. And so that preference leads to businesses offering cheaper, slower delivery options, maybe only that. So if you used to be used to getting your product faster for paying a little bit more, that option might not be available to you anymore. That's natural enshittification. The market is kind of leading people there. And as more and more scale leads to one thing, sometimes it kills off the other options because they become so expensive they're not even viable to support. So another way this happens is in niche markets, like I said. And so this one's really interesting to me. You could see it in like beer or cannabis, right? Where it's a small market of enthusiasts who really are focused on quality and love quality. And this market gets brought to the masses, like craft beer or cannabis going legal. And what we find out is like most things, most products, people prefer value. They kind of shop on value. They'll find where they get the most bang for their buck, right? And in general, that's at like economy products. Bud Light, Busch Light, they sell the most units. And so what happens in these niche markets is a business owner who used to produce a high quality product, right? They may get pushed out and lose their market share to people offering cheap worse products that actually the market prefers. Now, there may be some old timers or enthusiasts who still think this is the better stuff. Man, why can't I get that anymore? Those guys got pushed out of business by all this cheap garbage. The other thing that might happen is that business owner, they might decide, hey, I'm going to launch my own economy line. And so the enthusiasts, when they go to the store, they used to see a nice little selection of craft beer. Now they see a wide selection of craft beer, but most of it is crap to them, right? And so again, that's natural enshittification, right? The market is getting shittier, but it's really because it's been expanded. And so generally you can still find the high-end stuff you want, but you can see there's possibilities where like a grocery store having to choose which craft beer they stock, they're going to stock the stuff that moves the most. And so you might before you used to get your favorite two or three brands of craft beer. Well, now they've one or two of those has been replaced with a lower quality, higher value product. Natural enshittification. Now let's talk about unnatural enshittification. This is where I'll get a little fired up. Natural enshittification is entropy. Unnatural enshittification is when private equity shows up and says, what if we make this business worse and we do it on purpose? The core issue with any PE-backed business is that they treat the business and the business's assets as the primary revenue driver instead of the products and the services that the business offers. So it really, really changes the behavior, right? So imagine you own a business and you sell a widget for $10 and you make $3 of profit on it. Now, you could say, hey, I'm going to invest some of my savings and build a better widget that costs me $8, but I can sell it for 12. And now I'm going to make $4 a widget. It's going to take some R&D, it's going to take some innovation. I'm going to have to invest more cash on the go, but I'm going to get more per widget, and I think I'm going to take more market share because people are willing to pay one more dollar to get a better widget, right? Or pay two more dollars. Might mess up the math of that. But that's a normal business cycle. Another normal business cycle would be, hey, I make widgets. I sell them for $10. They cost me 7. I think if I take some of my savings and invest in some automation, I could make them for 5, and I could sell them for 8, and I'd make the same profit, but I'd get so much more market share because I can sell my product cheaper and I can still make the same amount. I just have to invest in a little automation. Those are that's like how to me, a good business person looks at the problem of I need to make more money. There's good cost cutting and there's bad cost cutting. If cost cutting affects the quality of your product, it's bad cost cutting. If cost cutting doesn't affect the quality of your product or improves it, where automation might actually improve it while cutting the costs, that's good cost cutting. And so we see this break where private equity and publicly owned companies generally lead towards bad cost cutting. They get what I would describe as lazy and uncreative. Private equity looks to maximize profits from money parked within a business over a short term, regardless of the effects of driving those profits during that term on the next 10 years of the business or the business itself or its employees, the greater world, any of those things, right? So here's the cycle. Profits are great for 5 years after private equity takes over. They've cut all the costs and they've raised the prices. So they're collecting a ton of cash, but they're alienating consumers. Eventually, the business goes over. Maybe they've saddled it with a bunch of debt from other businesses or some kind of shady practices, right? But eventually the business goes under and they sell it off for parts. And through those 5 years, they made a ton of money. They 3x, they 5x, they 10x the money they put into that business because they just wrung it dry. They get you and they twist it. They get you and they twist you, right? And at its core, though, is that same problem, right? Instead of focusing on driving profits, driving growth, and earning money by delivering a better product cheaper to the people, they alienated the people that supported them. They alienate their employees. They alienate their vendors. They destroyed the business itself for periodic gain. That's private equity's general cycle and pathway. Now, there are probably some good family offices out there, some good private equity out there who really helps businesses grow the right way. You don't see it that much. I don't see too many of those stories, but I'm not a private equity guy. Most of it seems very sharky to me. Private equity also has a mechanism where they might loan a business a bunch of money. And that loan is actually built for takeover. Now, it's a win if they pay off the loan because the rates on it are so high. But if they don't, the equity firm can take over the business for very cheap. And again, run that same cycle. Now, a similar cycle of unnatural enshitification occurs in public companies that are on the stock exchange. And it's very similar, right? Instead of the product being the product, instead of the businesses, services, and product being the primary revenue driver for the business and for the investors, the stock is now the product. I think Boeing is a great example of this as well. We've seen consistently a company that's charged with getting people safely from one place to another, flying in a tube in the air, is focused on shareholder profits in the short term, right? So again, instead of like producing better planes cheaper and selling more and taking more market share, they're in this area where they've plateaued, right? There's not so much more market share to get, but they've still got shareholders and they still got a stock price to keep high and to continue growth, right? And so call it uncreative or call them backed into a corner, all they can do is cut costs. And what does that lead to? Plane crashes. So when Uber went public, the business model mutated. And again, like the product becomes the stock price. And in the same way, private equity is looking to park money in a business for a short term, investors park their money in a stock price for a short term. But they can move their money around even easier, right? And they're looking for the best return on the stock while it's parked there. So if they're going to get 10% from Uber for this year, they can get 20% somewhere else. Well, they're going to move the stock somewhere else. And when that happens, that means they're selling Uber stock and they're driving the price down. And Uber can't have that. So when Uber went public, the same cycle occurred, right? And it's really interesting for a company like Uber because they've gone through a really prototype and shitification cycle, right? They've dumped a ton of money to almost dupe consumers into going with them and to drive out all of their competition, right? They drove out taxis, they drove out in-house delivery by restaurants, right? And then they kind of had control of the market. Then, because the growth slows and they're not delivering value to shareholders through stock growth, they actually need to start making profits and delivering value to shareholders through profits. You kind of have one of those two choices. You can lose a ton of money as a business as long as your stock price is going up, because then the investors are stoked. But then those investors, if that stock price starts to plateau, they need to start seeing dividends. So you got to do one or the both, one or the other. So all of the behavior in the company is tied to maintaining or driving the stock price up. And you'd think that as it shifts to delivering dividends from a stock and maintaining the stock price and actually delivering real value, companies would try to build new things, try to produce new revenue streams, better product, lower cost for them, better product for the consumer. For many companies, that's the only way they do it. I think Apple has done a pretty good job of not enshittifying their products. They just delivered better products over and over. We're getting to a weird place with Apple where maybe they can't improve on much anymore. But the fact remains, they established dominance in the market because their products were just better than everyone else's. Uber did the same thing, but Uber undercharged for their products while doing it. Apple made money on their products from the very start. That's a big difference. Duping your customers with low prices and great service to try to kill off all your competitors, then jacking up the prices, that's by design. That's enshittification by design. So what's the end game? We've reached peak enshittification. Delivery prices are high, food prices are high, wait times are long, delivery drivers aren't getting paid well. But at least we return some great value to shareholders for a short period of time, right? While some of this enshittification is natural, oftentimes it's planned. It is not a symptom, it's not a glitch. It is planned enshittification. And when it comes in the form of private equity, it often takes something from the people that was once great, that was once functional, that was once loved, that delivered good products, and it ruins it for short-term profits. The good thing is, in general, capitalism replaces bad companies, right? Uber backs itself into a corner. Hopefully, there's an incumbent who can provide a better product cheaper and is committed to doing so and can take their market share. Some companies get so big that's not possible, and they have true price dominance in a market. We'll see if Uber is that. I think streaming services arguably have that right now too. You know, they can double their price. I don't think many people are going anywhere. But a young founder with a lot of vim, a lot of vigor, willing to leverage their own time to deliver a great product can upset a pretty big company. A great idea can upset a great company. But the question is, do we just see these same cycles of enshittification take the incumbent next, right? While I believe capitalism could save us, regulated capitalism, I think there is definitely a need for some change in the way that stocks and stock prices and stock buybacks and the companies within the publicly traded atmosphere interact with their workers and the public to prevent this sort of thing. A great incumbent company can come and produce a great product and replace a bad company. But in a world where there's 6,000 private equity firms in America, there's 13,000 McDonald's, there's 6,000 PE firms. Do we really need that? I don't know what the answer is. I'm kind of just pointing out a problem here. But it's a cycle we should all be aware of. In the end, it comes down to supporting smaller businesses might be the answer. If you want a higher quality product and you're willing to pay a little bit more, next time an option comes along that's cheaper, faster, more convenient, coming from one of the big guys, maybe you should think about not getting short-term satisfaction, short-term profits by jumping ship to a new guy. And you should think, are they private equity backed? Are they publicly traded? In 4 years, are they going to enshittify this whole thing? And when I want to crawl back to my local purveyor of whatever widget it was that the new guy replaced, is he even going to be there? Am I going to be able to crawl back? Or is it going to be an empty building? And old Russ, who used to run it, he's out back, hammered drunk. He tried to sell Aflac insurance. That didn't work out. House is getting foreclosed on. I'm being dramatic. But I will say, some of this responsibility does fall on the consumer. Think about it next time you're about to jump ship from one of your favorite products, one of your favorite sellers. Are they going to be there in 5 years when you come crawling back? Or are you okay with living in an enshittified world? I'm Says Nate. Please like, subscribe, follow, find me, comment, do anything. to interact with me. I'm all alone out here. This is my first video. See how it goes. Appreciate you guys.